Hi everyone, welcome again to today's session, and thank you all for joining today with us in the session. And we have a topic for today's session is TypeScript, and we have Sinji with us today to explain about TypeScript and how you can get started with it. Sinji is MVP and he works as a full stack developer, and he will be walking us through how you can get into it, what is TypeScript and what you need to know about it to get started with it. And let's get into it. Over to you.
Yep. Hello. Yeah. Can you hear me, guys?
Yes.
Yep. Thank you, Surag. Yeah. So welcome everyone to my session. Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, uh, from anywhere. So yeah. Our topic for today will be a simple language that is being used already in different companies and uh different applications. So it's about TypeScript. So I will just introduce you on how or what are the basic features and the fundamentals of TypeScript. So yeah, let me share my screen. Okay. Right. So can you see my screen now?
Yes.
All right, thank you, sir. Right, so once again, welcome guys to my session. I'm CG Villafranca, a Microsoft MVP, and also a Filipino developer, which is based here in the Netherlands. So before we proceed in our session, TypeScript in a nutshell. So yeah, I'll just talk about myself. So yeah, currently I'm a Microsoft MVP, which is currently based here in the Netherlands. So I'm a senior developer from Waipun Technologies and KPN. So, as a Microsoft MVP, so one of my tasks is to share my knowledge and my tech stuffs with you guys from students to professional developers, and especially about Microsoft products since I focus on Angular, TypeScript, and Microsoft. So, yeah, that's one of my roles as a Microsoft MVP. And also, I'm one of the community leaders of Angular Philippines. So even though I'm currently based here in the Netherlands, I still organize events which are being conducted currently in the Philippines. So yeah. Also, I'm an book author. So I just released a new book last December 2022. So it's about Java, Spring, and Angular and Azure. So if I can share the link later on if you want to learn more about Angular or you want to learn more about full stack development. It's kind of related to my topic since Angular is using the TypeScript language. So if you want to learn about Angular and Java and Azure, so yeah, I would recommend that book or because it's a practical way of how we develop things. So yeah, if you want to know more about me, I have my own website, cgvillafranca.com, and I also have my blogs there. It's about my tutorials and my other stuffs about technologies. And uh, with my blogs, it's also connected with my GitHub CGV13. So if you want to have a sample of my code, so you are free to pull all my codes there and all of my examples. So I also have open source, and if you want to contribute, so you are free to contribute with my code. So yeah, um, I've been speaking a lot already, so it's been 5 years since when I started speaking in community and meetups, and these are just one of my or some of my talks previously. So I've been talking to my home community, Angular Philippines, and other local meetups in the Philippines, and right now I'm in Europe. So yeah, I've been into several remote events already. Okay. Yep. So enough about me, guys. So I know you've been joining this session because of my topic. So our topic for today is TypeScript. So TypeScript in a nutshell. So I will not be teaching the TypeScript as a whole because I don't want you guys to have an information overload because TypeScript is a really big language. And right now it's continuously improving and they have a different lot of features. And previously they have just upgraded from into 4.9.4, and we're currently also studying the different features or or the advanced features. And yeah, TypeScript really offers a lot right now compared on how TypeScript started. So first, our question is, what the hell is TypeScript? Okay, so TypeScript, to summarize, it's just a programming language that is developed by Microsoft. So it's free, it's open source, and it's a superset of JavaScript. So the most important uh, description or the most important information is it's a superset of JavaScript. So we will know later what does that mean. So what is superset? So in October 2012, TypeScript was released, but it was actually beta. So it was not version 1, but it's only version 0.8. So the creator of TypeScript is Anders Heisberg. He's the lead architect of C Sharp. So if you started learning TypeScript or if you know TypeScript already, so uh, you might notice the resemblance of TypeScript in compared to C Sharp. So they have some similarities when it comes to syntax. That's why that's because the creator of C Sharp or the creator of TypeScript rather is the creator also or the developer of C Sharp. So that is Anders Heisberg. Then TypeScript was really one of the most or we can consider one of the uh programming languages that advances the way of how we develop because it's the superset of JavaScript. It's actually a really big improvement since JavaScript is an implicit data type, but TypeScript is an explicit and it covers or it offers a lot more features compared to JavaScript. But on the other hand, it also has disadvantages when you use TypeScript. So around 2012, it was developed as a beta. So this means that it doesn't really offers a lot of tools or it doesn't have a lot of tools that to be supported when you use TypeScript. So in this case, one of the disadvantages is the absence of IDE support. So TypeScript was developed, but it doesn't have any plugins or it doesn't have any extensions, and in this one, it doesn't even have an ID support. So it will it can be complex for the developers to use TypeScript. And because of that problem, around 2013, Eclipse developed a plugin called a plugin. So this is uh it's a plugin developed by Palantir, which is found in Eclipse. So this is a plugin for or specifically for TypeScript. And also Sublime around 2013, they also supported the TypeScript version 0.8. And since TypeScript is becoming more popular and popular and more editors and ID are supporting them, so Anders Heisberg and his team has decided to upgrade TypeScript, and this is now 0.9. And with that kind of improvement, so TypeScript supports already generics. And around 2014, it was not beta anymore, and it was released to the public, and it's now called TypeScript 1. So uh, TypeScript has a really good start, but at the same time, it allows other developers to see its capability. So they have produced or they have developed different kind of technologies or different kind of plugins that supports TypeScript. So making TypeScript more easier or easier to use by several developers. So yeah, I have mentioned a while ago it's a superset of JavaScript. So what does superset really means? So let's say, for example, JavaScript itself. So we call it JavaScript, plain JavaScript or vanilla JavaScript. So this is just a simple JavaScript that we are using. So this is actually the scripting language that the browser understands. So the JavaScript itself, can understand, it can provide the prototypes or the dynamic types. And as we all know, it is actually implicit. So since it's a dynamic type, so we don't set the types or we don't use strict types when it comes to JavaScript. As long as we assign the value or what the data type of the value is, it will automatically assign by the compiler. So that's basically JavaScript. So JavaScript is very powerful because this allows us to have events, to listen, or to make our websites more dynamic and to be more interactive to users. But as you know, guys, we are developers. JavaScript or plain JavaScript is kind of headache to use, especially it doesn't have a compiler, it doesn't have errors, and it's a mess. So it's kind of a mess if you use plain JavaScript, especially if you don't have standards. So before developing TypeScript or before TypeScript was released, there was already ES6. So ES6 is just another layer for JavaScript, which adds up standards to JavaScript. So this makes JavaScript easier to be used and to be written in the code. So it's really it's just like a layer that allows us to write JavaScript in a cleaner manner. So that's ES6. So it has a standards, it has its own documentation. So it allows us also to access more features within JavaScript. Okay. So this is where the TypeScript comes in. So this is why we call it superset. So TypeScript, it's being transpiled into JavaScript. So it's actually being developed or been developed by using JavaScript, but it allows or it gives us more features. So superset means JavaScript, what JavaScript can offer you, TypeScript can also offer you with additional features. So as we can see here in the diagram, so to simply summarize it, so JavaScript has the prototype and dynamic types features. On the other hand, TypeScript also has that features. So it has the prototypes, dynamic types, but it adds another special features like the generic types and interfaces and many more. So TypeScript is a more powerful language compared to JavaScript, such that it offers the pattern or the object-oriented pattern. So yeah, that's what superset language means. Right. So, guys, I'm not sure, but if you can raise your hand. So, I'm not sure if who are the professionals here in or who has experience in development or who are the beginners. But um, I'm not sure if also you are familiar with object-oriented programming, but as I have said a while ago, TypeScript is OOP. It offers already the OOP pattern for programming. So it's a JavaScript that adds up the OOP pattern. So it's a sample code. So you can see here that we are already using classes in JavaScript. So you can see that I have created a class student with a property full name, and it also has a constructor for us to set the initial value of that class. So you can see here that uh, we can inject the values. So the first name, middle initial, and the last name. So class, as we all know, we can instantiate a new object of a class. So in this case, we can set the value as we create a new instance. And as we know, OOP, it's other than using classes, if we want to just create a new type or a blueprint of a property, so we want just to have an interface. So we can have an interface person and also have several properties and even functions. So this is just a snippet or just a trailer for you on how we code TypeScript. So yeah, um, to a deeper definition or the deeper description of what is TypeScript, as I have mentioned several times, it's object-oriented programming. So in plain JavaScript, you are not using object-oriented programming. So we can say that sometimes if we have a complex project or if we have a complex application and we are just using vanilla JavaScript, so it can really be a mess. So all of your codes are anywhere, all of your functions are found in different files. So that's really a headache. That's a really big issue when it comes to maintainability of the code. So object-oriented programming is one of the famous patterns that we're using in development. So it's now being used in TypeScript. So it's like coding JavaScript with OOP. Then the best part, one of the best part of using TypeScript is it has a transpiler. So it provides JavaScript for the features of typing. So instead of using implicit data types, we are now having explicit data types. So compared to using C Sharp and Java, so we can now set the data types manually. So what's the advantage of that one? So we are now strict when it comes to data type. So when we are defining parameters in our functions, we are defining the variables. So we are strictly having the types to when it comes to using that variable or functions. So that's one of the biggest advantages of TypeScript. And you can see that it's called TypeScript because of this feature, since this is one of the major layer or major additional feature that TypeScript adds to JavaScript. And also, one of the major features or one of the major advantages of using TypeScript is it catches errors and provides fixes before running code. So in JavaScript, since it's a scripting language and you are just running it on the browser, so it's really hard for you to find the errors or the syntax issues when it comes into plain JavaScript code because you are not transpiling or you are not compiling anything. So it's really difficult for us to debug a JavaScript code. But on the other hand, TypeScript catches an error. This is because of the transpiler also. So TypeScript is cannot be understood by the browser. It's converted into JavaScript for the browser to understand. So before converting the JavaScript or before transpiling it, so the transpiler checks your TypeScript code. So before you even before you even run your application. So just like C Sharp or Java, so it will not prompt the error of your code. So it's the syntax errors, the um issue or other issues. So this will now be prompted when you are using TypeScript. So these are the two major advantages or features that TypeScript offers. So yeah, as I have said a while ago, browsers don't understand TypeScript. So it uses transpiler, and you can use multiple targets such as ES6 or ES5. So um, it has an advantage, guys, since it already gives you the power of explicit data type. At the same time, it gives you the a more transparency as such that it gives you the errors before running into your browser. But as you can see, in terms of performance wise or in terms of performance comparability, so TypeScript is slower compared to JavaScript since we are using transpiler in the middle. So that's the disadvantage, but um, TypeScript is continuously improving the transpiling, such as how to uglify or how to tree shake the not needed code in your application. So they are continuously improving um, this is since TypeScript is offers a lot of features already. Okay. So yeah, TypeScript has gone a long way already. So it's now on version 4.9.4. So I've started using TypeScript around TypeScript 1 actually. So I've been using it also in Angular. So in Angular started using TypeScript when they have upgraded to Angular version 2. But right now I'm still studying their documentation since they are offering a lot of features already and they have several ways on how to do stuffs or how to do things. So if you want to learn more about TypeScript, so they have uh, good documentation for that one. So yeah, just to make things or to make things light up. So JavaScript, it's a meme that developers are now shifting to TypeScript because of its features such as the transpiler or how the explicit data type and how to structure things so it's easier now compared to using plain JavaScript. Okay, so yeah, I have said a while ago, so why TypeScript? So it highlights errors at compilation time during the time of development. So when I started using TypeScript, this is really one of the best things that I've seen with them because using plain JavaScript is really a headache. So I've built a lot of applications or different applications using plain JavaScript and totally I don't want to go back there anymore. So yeah. Um Next is namespace concept by defining a module. So TypeScript is using namespace, but currently it's kind of deprecated. So instead of using namespace, we are now using modules. So if you use TypeScript before, you see the import, so that's one example of module. So this is one way of how we group stuffs or how we group related logic in TypeScript. Then um, the third one is the strongly type or static typing. So this is the one I've mentioned, which is the explicit data type. So we are now strictly creating or strictly assigning types to variables, parameters, and even the return of the functions. So yeah, this is just the basic features of TypeScript. I will not explain some or all of the features because we will not be finishing in 1 hour if I include it in my topic. But these are just the basic or intro if you want to learn TypeScript. So the first one, basically, this is the most important features of TypeScript. Is this feature is the types. So uh, in JavaScript, yes, we have types like the string or number, but we are not required to assign it to the variable or parameter. But so it means that it's implicit. The browser assigns it. So once you have, for example, you assign a number to the variable, so it's automatically being uh, having a type of number. So behind that situation or behind that mechanism, it's actually having the type any. So any can be a boolean, can be a string, or can be a number. So TypeScript can also do this, and you can also assign a variable having an any uh, type. So this can be different types that we have in TypeScript. So the any type, when it comes to TypeScript, they have separated this into two categories. So the first one is the built-in types. So this is the types that we all know. So the number, string, boolean, even the void, null, and undefined. And the second one is the user-defined types. So these are the arrays, enums, classes, and interfaces. So we can, since it's object-oriented programming, so we can also define our own types. So it's about especially the classes and interfaces. So yeah, that's the types that we have, but they are also com they there are also different types such as the generics, so we can also create, but that's a more complex, but that's the two basic categories of the types. So we can assign we can assign a type or a data type to variables, functions, or parameters of the functions. And also, it's not only limited for assigning a single type, but we can also assign union types to variables and even parameters. So we call this union types. So it's the ability to combine one or two types. So we can see here in the example that it's we have a value we have a variable val, and it can be a string or number. So by just using the pipe symbol, so we can have it can have two types already. So we can assign a number 12 or a string since it is assigned as having two types. So this is also one of the power of one of the features of TypeScript, right? So you have seen a snippet of this a while ago. So next one is the interfaces. So the interfaces is actually just the blueprint. So it's like a class, but you cannot instantiate it with a new object. So I know guys you are familiar with this, but it's very powerful when it comes to TypeScript since you can by not it's not just having properties, but it's also capable of having functions. So you can see here in the interface uh, person, so it has two variables or two properties rather and a one function. So you can define the blueprint of a particular, or you can define a new type using an interface. So in order for you to use this interface, so you will just use it just like a type. So in this case, employee colon I person. So the I person is now acting as a type. And that employee will contain the properties and the function of that interface. So um, just remember, guys, I forgot to mention that in assigning a data type in TypeScript, so it's always in reverse. So I know that we are used to having assigning data types uh, by placing the data type first and the variable, but in TypeScript, we place the data type after the variable. So in this case, employee colon and the data type. So compared to Java, we are assigning string Java. So that can, or that might be confusing to you. So always remember that. So yeah, we have the interfaces and now we have the classes. So the class is uh, it's also can be used as a type, but the difference is you can instantiate a new object. So it's pretty much the same on how we create interface, but we just use the reserved word class in creating a new class. Then we define the properties, we define the functions, and it also has a constructor that will allow us to set the value once we instantiate a new object. So in this example, we have the engine string property, and we would want the developer or the user to set the value of engine once he instantiate a new object. So we define the constructor and engine as a parameter, and we assign the engine value to the um, engine property of the class. So we can also have functions just as the interface, but compared to interface, classes should have implementation of the function. Right. So TypeScript have classes, have interfaces. Also, you can define a generic object. So objects is just like uh, a JSON object. So you can define the properties, the value of the properties, and you can even add functions to the object. So pretty much this doesn't have uh, an interface type or a custom type, but we are defining each properties manually. So in this case, we have defined three properties rather, which is the key one, key two, and key four, and we have the key tree as a function. So think of it or imagine it as just a JSON, and we can use it in the different parts of our code. So yeah, um, we have the JSON objects, the classes, and the interface. Since we are developing TypeScript using classes, so classes also have access modifiers. So not just classes rather, but also the functions and even the variables. So you might also be familiar with this since this is being used by C# and Java, but um, I will just have an overview of what's the difference of the three access modifiers which is present in TypeScript. So we have the public, the private, and the protected. So in this case, public can be accessed typically in all parts of your code. So it can be accessed within the class, it can be accessed in subclass or the class that extends your main class. Then it can access also through outside the class where the public function or variable is assigned or defined. Then the private, so to summarize it, you can just access the private within the class where it is, which is defined. Then lastly is the protected. So the difference here on protected is you can access the protected function or the variable within the class and in the subclass only. But if you don't access or if you access it on the outside class, so it is it cannot be accessed or it will not be allowed. So this is the main difference of the access modifiers. So this is very useful such that we want, for example, we want to prevent the developers or other developers to access this kind of method. So if you want to abstract it, so this is very useful when it comes to TypeScript. So actually, this is one of the major advantages also now in TypeScript, since in JavaScript uh, we are not capable of doing this. So this also allows us to make the code more maintainable. Right. So this is just an example of the access modifiers. So for example, we have a class employee. So I have defined three variables, which has different three access modifiers, public, private, and protected. So for example, your employee is your main class and it's extended by the person. So in this case, the only accessible in the person is the employee ID, at the same time the employee name, since uh or age rather, sorry. So the age is protected, so it still can be accessed in the subclass. So the subclass here is the person, and emp ID for sure it can be accessed because it's public. The only thing that cannot be accessed by the person is the employee name. So then the outside class. So for example, you are already in another class or you're already outside every classes. So the only accessible there is the employee ID. Okay, so that's the main difference of the three, right? Then we also have accessors. So we are using OOP, we are using OOP pattern. So um, you are already familiar with it. So we have the getter and setter. So we can set, we can define a set functions and a get function that allows us to set the variables of the class. So this is pretty much the same on how we do things in C# or in Java. Okay, right. So yes, I've been mentioning OOP already. So you might know that and TypeScript also have the four pillars of OOP. And one of this is the overloading. So multiple methods with the same name. Yeah, they have they have these four pillars of OOP, but they might differ in the rules on how you use these pillars. So uh it can be confusing, but in order for you to know what are the rules, so you should read the documentation of TypeScript, since they have different rules compared on how Java or C# uses the four pillars. So in this case, overloading. So overloading is using the multiple methods with the same name. So specifically, you have same function name, but you have different parameters or different implementation of that function. So in overloading, so the rules here is the function name is the same, so typically much the same. The number of parameters is different in each overloaded function. So this is the first rule. So you have a same function name, but it should have different number of parameters. And next is the number parameters is the same, and their type is different. So the number of the parameters of the two or more functions can be the same, but the condition here is their type should be different. So this is the second rule. So the next one, the all overloads must have the same return type. So you can have different implementation of the function, but each function should have the same return type. So you cannot have function one having return of string and the function one with different parameters, but it returns a number. So that will violate the rules of TypeScript. So you should be aware on how to use the overloading in the TypeScript language. So yeah, this is one example on how we use the overloading. So we can see that we have the add function, but we are what do you call this? We are using it, or we are creating it in different implementation. So this is actually a wrong way of how we implement, because you can see uh in our rule that it must have the same return type. But in this case, it doesn't have same return type. So what we should do is uh, we modify the other function into a string or a number as long as they have the same return type. So, but we can see here that the add has the first implementation is the add has two parameters, which is uh, has a type string, and the second implementation has two parameters also, but they have a uh, different data type or different types of parameter. So that's the correct implementation, right? So next one is the inheritance. So another pillar of OOP. So inheritance, you have seen the example a while ago. So it's the extents. So it's being used by having a code reusability. So it's creating a new class coming from a new class. So it's used because of using code or um, reducing the boilerplate code. So inheritance is very useful when it comes to OOP. So in this example, we have a class hero. So it has a property name and it has a constructor which assigns or initialize the value of the name. So we want to create a class that would have also a variable or would have also have a property of name. So we want to extend the hero. So we can create a class Spider-Man. So basically, Spider-Man is a hero, so he has a name. So we just want to extend it. So in this case, uh, we can access the name property of hero in the Spider-Man class. So that's basically what extends or inheritance are for. So the most important rule here is the property that you want to access should be public or should just be protected. Right. Next one, the next we are done with some of the pillars of OOP, and some of the basic features or fundamentals of OOP, such as classes and interface. Now let's move on to the grouping or how we structure TypeScript. So in this first feature, this first uh, uh, introduction or first fundamentals of TypeScript, which is the namespace. This is actually deprecated, but this is separated by modules. But this is how TypeScript started on how they group or how they categorized functions inside the code. But even though that this is already not being used too much, this can be still be used or this is still available in TypeScript. So in namespaces, it's the logical grouping of functionalities. So if you have functions or you have variables that are related to each other or there's logic, their logic is they're being used as in a single logic. So we are using namespace. So for example, we have an employee salary and we should want it to prefix by the reserved word namespace. And it has a function calc salary. So in order for that to be used in different parts of the code, so we should have the export reserved word. And in order for us to use that TypeScript code, so we will just use the reference path employee salary.ts. So we will just point the path to the file employee salary. And after that, we can use the calc salary function outside the code. So this is just basically the grouping of uh, code in our application. So yeah, that's the first way of how we group or logic how we group the logic in our code. So the next way and the common and the currently used way is by the use of modules. So this is also used for grouping of related variables, functions, classes, and interface. So it has the same concept or it has the same use as namespace, but this is more convenient. At the same time, this is more easier to read and maintain. So in this example, modules, so it's creating a module using the export word. So we're just using the export before the class that we have created. So for example, we are creating the class employee name. So we can we will just add the export word, and we can already use that employee name in the different parts of the code by just importing it. So we can see here in this example that we are importing the module that we have created. So basically, this is the class name, employee name. So um, one of the reasons why we are also using this now because we are also using classes in TypeScript. So you don't have to create function, or you don't have to create a namespace anymore just to reuse your code. So we are exporting directly our classes into the different parts of code, making it more cleaner and reduced more le and lesser code rather. Okay. So yeah, that's just some of the features or the basic features of TypeScript, but they also have other features that is very useful when it comes to developing your application. So these are just the decorators, the duck typing, the map, and the arrow function. So if you want to learn more about that, guys, you can go to their TypeScript documentation, and they have a more detailed way on how to use these features. So yeah, I don't want you to have information overload about TypeScript. Um, TypeScript has basic features, but if you deep dive more on the advanced features of TypeScript, so it's kind of complex. So you need to have a deeper understanding, and you need to have more time on how to learn using TypeScript programming language. So yeah, why am I sharing this to you guys? So you might question yourself, why would we even use TypeScript? There are a lot more languages right now that are currently being used in the industry. So why would you believe me? And why would you use TypeScript in your career? So TypeScript is really now famous when it comes to developing applications, and simply not just it's easier, it offers a lot of features, but it's very powerful. So you're not just using it for the front end, but you're also using it for back end applications. And right now, there are really a lot of famous frameworks and JavaScript libraries that are using TypeScript already. Number one there is Angular. So Angular started using TypeScript around uh I think around 2012 also, or 2013, since TypeScript was released. So when they released Angular 2, it was already using TypeScript. So it was not that famous at that time, and it offers lesser features compared to now, but right now uh it really offers a lot, and it has a lot of features when it comes to using Angular also. And right now, React is also using TypeScript. It's already compatible. Vue.js also, Node.js, yeah, they are also compatible now with TypeScript. You just have to install the TypeScript library and configure some stuff like the tsconfig.json, and you are good to go. And this offers a new paradigm in Node.js, since TypeScript is OOP. And lastly, if you know about Nest.js, so they are also using TypeScript. When you explore Nest.js, guys, it's pretty much on how we do Angular, but Angular is front end, and Nest it is like the back end version of Angular. So it's also using TypeScript. So these are just some of the frameworks that are using TypeScript. There are also other frameworks like Svelte that are using TypeScript. So it's really now used in different companies and different applications. So yeah, I'm just one of the sharers of TypeScript, but TypeScript has a lot of communities that are very useful. So I will share the slide later with you guys, so you can have the links that I have here. But these are just some of their communities. So they have Stack Overflow, they have their GitHub. I forgot to mention TypeScript is open source, so you will have access to their code on how they do it. And also they have their chat, or the Discord chat, and they have the Twitter for you to be updated on their features. And they also have definitely type, which is the TypeScript definition files. So these are the libraries. It's just like npm, but these are the libraries and frameworks that is specifically implemented for TypeScript. Yeah. So yeah, um, TypeScript started with no IDE support, but right now there are a lot of IDE that is supporting TypeScript. And number one is Visual Studio. So they have different plugins and extension for TypeScript. So I also use that, and it's very convenient, especially when you're developing complex application. And WebStorm also from IntelliJ, they have an extension for TypeScript. Visual Studio Code. So if you don't want to use IDE, so Visual Studio has a lot of extensions and plugins for TypeScript also. And even for Angular, if you're using Angular or React, they have different tools that is very useful and can make your developer much faster. And also Eclipse, since one of the first plugins is developed in Eclipse, so they also have a TypeScript plugin. So yeah, um, I know guys that you have absorbed so much information already in TypeScript, but I just want to show you some of the, I guess some of the unique features of what TypeScript have. So this is not really advanced, but you might not see it. You might not see this concept or feature in some other code. Okay. So yeah, this is almost done. Don't worry. So these are just five or four features that we have in TypeScript. So yeah, the first one is the private fields. So if you need a private property at runtime, so it's not private on your local, or it's not private before you run your program, but you want it to be private, or you don't want to be accessed on the runtime. So you can just prepend a hashtag or a pound icon, or a pound symbol rather, in your variable. So for example, the name, so you can prepend, or you can have a prefix of pound symbol in the name, and this will be private in the runtime. Okay. Next is knowledge coalescing. So I know that I'm not sure if other languages have this, but knowledge coalescing is uh, one way of making your code simple. So if if you want to use the if conditions, so for example, you want to compare, you want to check if a certain variable is null or undefined or false, so you can use knowledge coalescing. So for example, to summarize the things that you see in this slide, so you have a variable coffee, so it has a value of copico. Then if it has a value, so it will return the value of the coffee. But if it's not if it doesn't have a value, or it's undefined, or it's null, so it will return false. So that's uh the basic concept of knowledge coalescing. So instead of using if else condition, or um um uh a more complex way of writing it, so we just use knowledge coalescing. So this is more convenient for the developers. Next is optional chaining. So another way of making things, or making code simple. So it's used for property checking if the property that you are trying to access is null or undefined. So this is not just a simple way, but it's also one way of preventing accessing undefined objects. So for example, we have the common way. So in order for us to prevent the accessing properties from an undefined object, so we would do this. So we would check if the object one is not undefined, object one, that prop one is not undefined. So we would access the prop two. So it's kind of messy, and it's kind of uh, complex. So what we're going to do is just add a question mark before the dot. So in optional chaining, you can see here that we have a question mark between the property and the dot. So the question mark is just simply saying that if object one is undefined, do not access property one. So this would be false already. So that's the concept of optional chaining. So this is very useful. So next is exponentiation. So this is just simple. So this is just a shorthand of math.pow. So instead of using the math.pow of JavaScript to have the value of the exponent of a specific number, so you just use the asterisk asterisk. So that's exponentiation. The next is the numeric separator. So I already seen this in several code, and from what I remember, some of the developers they have just discovered this recently. They don't know that you can do this in large numbers, but for your number to be more readable, so you can just use the underscore for your number. So for example, your number is uh 912,345,678. So to be more readable, you just add an underscore between the numbers. So you can see that it's more clear what number is being assigned. So this is actually useful for large numbers. Yeah. And I think this is the last one. So the assignment operators. So this is by just using the asterisk asterisk equal and equal and the pipe equal and the question mark equal. So this is also a one way or one way of reducing or making your code lesser. So um these are the equivalent codes for each assignment operators. So if using this double and equal, so this is just saying that if the A is not undefined or null, so you will assign the second variable to that A. So it's just one way of, or it's just a shorthand of assigning values based on a certain condition. So this is also useful for making your code cleaner and less conditional operators. Okay, so yeah, that's the last one. So I know that I didn't discuss all of the features of TypeScript, and I just discussed some of the useful. But if you want to start coding or if you want to learn TypeScript, so just go to typescriptlang.org/docs, and they really have a detailed documentation. And if you want to deep dive more, so it's very useful to use their documentation. And also, if you don't want to set up your TypeScript on your local, they also have the TypeScript Playground. So we can access it on typescriptlang.org.play. So if you access that, you can see their playground, and you can code your TypeScript on the fly. So for example, you want to code uh TypeScript. So the TypeScript Playground will run your code already here. So if you want just to learn or want to try the syntax, so TypeScript Playground is very useful. Right. So yeah, I guess that's from my talk. So I hope you learned from me guys with TypeScript. I know that this is just an introduction or basic features, but yeah, I am also a mentor, and even though that this talk is done, so you can reach me out in my social handles, in my GitHub, and even in my website. So if you have questions or other inquiries or queries, so yeah, just feel free to message me or ping me up. So yeah, thank you for attending this short talk, and yeah, I hope you all learned a lot from this topic. And yeah, to follow me also, I forgot. So just go to Angular Philippines. So it's from the Facebook groups. So I'll just share the link later, but it's called Angular Philippines. So we just don't talk about Angular, but we talk about different technologies and even cloud. So if you are free to join in our community. So yeah, thank you again guys for joining this session. And yeah, I hope you learned a lot from my topic. Okay.
Thank you, Sinji, for the wonderful session. I hope you guys have learned something from the today's session. If you have any questions, you can drop it in the chat box so that you can respond to it. I hope you guys are having some questions or any any doubts that you want to be cleared. We still have 4 minutes to go so that something we can respond to it. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's like there's
Yep.
no
No.
questions related
Yeah,
to
no
that.
question. Thank you, everyone. So,
Yeah, I think there
I
is
there.
one.
Yep. All right. Yeah, I saw one question. What is this? Yeah, is there a difference between ES5 and ES6? So yeah, thank you for the question, Stephen. Yep. So yeah, there's a difference actually. So it's just like a version. So when you look at the documentation, so they have improved a lot when it comes to the standards. So I think there are a lot of standards that are different, but I'm not really familiar. For example, for the Lambda function, so they have introduced it also in ES6. ES6 was released around, I guess, 2015. ES5 is 2010 or 2009, not sure. But yeah, it's just like a version. So you will see that in their documentation. Then, yep, thank you, Stephen, for the question. Then next, how is the job market for TypeScript? Yep, yeah. So, TypeScript is really now in demand right now, but you will see in, for example, in LinkedIn or in some job applications that um, frameworks such as Angular or React is in demand right now, but you will see on top, or you will see together with the description that you should know about TypeScript because they're using TypeScript already. And even for backend positions, so they're using Node.js, but on top of that, they're not using plain JavaScript, but they're using TypeScript also. So most of the companies right now that are using JavaScript frameworks, they're already using TypeScript. And in my experience, if they're not using TypeScript and they're using only JavaScript, they're already migrating into TypeScript because they are seeing the advantages and the great features of TypeScript. So yeah. And yeah, thank you again for the question. Okay. And yeah, another question. TypeScript for front end or back end? Yeah, thank you for the question, Rida. Yeah, as I have said a while ago, it can be used for both. So just an example, guys. I'm a developer for Angular and Node. So Angular is really using TypeScript since version 2, but Angular 1 also, if someone is still using Angular 1, it's also now compatible in TypeScript. So you can use Angular 1 using TypeScript. And our Node.js, it's also built it's also being developed using TypeScript. We have some Node.js applications because we are using microservices. We have applications or we have microservices that is developed by JavaScript, but right now it's being migrated to TypeScript, so you can use it by on both. Right. So okay. Did I miss any question? Right. So yeah, explain front end and back end and database position. Yeah, thank you for the question. What do you mean by uh position, or what should I explain? Will I explain what we are currently doing as a front end or back end? Is that what you mean? Oh yeah, I'll answer this question first from Tristan. So how do you migrate JavaScript codes to TypeScript? Yeah. So so for JavaScript to TypeScript, so it's actually um manual, but since you can still use JavaScript when it comes to TypeScript, so we are just transferring that code, but in a more technical way. So we are using the TypeScript library, and uh we're also installing that, or we are adding that to our npm libraries. So basically, we have the tsconfig JSON. We added the lints, and we added the some unit tests. So uh, instead of using the plain JavaScript, so we architect it. Uh, we structured it into classes, into interfaces. So there's not there's no available uh application or tool right now to migrate your JavaScript into TypeScript, because I think that's very complex. So it's very kind of technical. So we plan it first. So we create the classes, create the interfaces, we create the different services for that. So that's basically the overview on how we migrate the TypeScript. Okay. Yep. So right. Yes, you've said that your mentor was this required to have one-to-one session, like, yep. If you want to be mentored, so yeah, you can just ping me up out of this session. It's okay. So it's not really required to have a one-to-one session, but if you just want to message me, guys, so you're free. You can reach me up into my website or into my social handles. So yeah, okay. Yep. Okay, I get what you said. So I think this is the last question. So Angular or React code is front end and database is back. Yeah, so TypeScript is being used by Angular. So it's a JavaScript framework, right? So it uses the TypeScript. So once, for example, you can get on the documentation of Angular. So when you build Angular application, so it's using TypeScript. And for the back end, yeah, you can also, for example, you're using Node.js. So instead of using JavaScript, so you can use the TypeScript language. So that's where TypeScript is being applied, right? So yeah, I think
I think,
there's no more questions.
yeah, there is no more question. Okay, I think we can settle today's session. Thank you, Sanjeev, for the wonderful
Yep.
session, and thank you all for joining with us today. And if it possible, you can share me the presentation so that I can give it the attendees.
Yes, sure. Yep. I will share the presentation.
Thank you, and have a
Thank
good
you,
rest of the
everyone.
day.
Yep. Thank you again.